Ladies and gentlemen, come gather round, come gather round, come gather around. Woo! Today, we're going to fuel up our car right to the very, very tippy top, to the point that we need to put the gas pedal all the way to the floor to flood clear this engine so it'll even start. Otherwise, I'll just crank it for frickin' ever, and that's annoying. Relatively easy fix. Let's fix it. Let's go! Alright. Watch. Doesn't start. Okay. Foot to the floor. Okay, gas pedal. Foot to the floor. Flood clear. There you go. We're gonna fix this. That's annoying. Likely what the issue is the evaporative emissions. Back in the bad old days, you fill up your gas tank and gas would just evaporate and float off into Mother Nature. But apparently that's not good for the environment. So they have an evaporative emission system which takes the fumes that would have evaporated, stores them in like a charcoal canister, and then when the engine is cruising, burns that fuel that would have evaporated, and we put it to some useful use for us. This has one solenoid that I believe just locks off, like seals it off so it doesn't flood the engine like when you're fueling it, or have it just evaporate into the motor instead of being stored in the charcoal canister like it's supposed to. And I believe that thing is faulty. So we're going to put a new one in here. This was probably the cheapest one I could find off of Rock Auto. It looks pretty simple. My kid's Honda Civic was having a similar issue, but he has like 3 solenoids that make all of this work. But Hyundai was able to simplify this pretty good. So here's your basic solenoid, 2 little electrical connections inside to make this thing go. There's a rubbery holder that clips onto the back of the motor, a connection, and I'll be honest with you, it's hard to get to or hard to see, but it is right back there. Can you see it? That's the guy, right at the very back of the intake manifold. So I'll try to position this camera so that you can see, and we'll get this job done. So the first thing you're probably going to want to do is remove the intake air system, the little convoluted rubber hose. It's basically kind of a stringy hose clamp around the throttle body. I think I just bent it out of the way. I don't think I even took it off of the air filter. Then the hose pops off if you squeeze its little clamp. The brackets just slides right off. I did disconnect the throttle position sensor so I could get a pair of pliers in there, squeeze its hose thingy, and then that hose took a while to get off. It's probably never been off before. Kind of annoying. There are tricks though. Okay, that's annoying. But it's just toit like a toiger. And I can wrap that around. Get the pliers on that. This is where you want to have a collection of bizarrely shaped pliers that can get into places that your old man arthritic hands can't get into. I've got relatively large hands, and I had a real hard time getting in there. If I could have gotten it disconnected at the bottom and leave the hose, that would be fine. Secret weapon to get those off is cut the hose. The trick is going to be, can I get in there? I bet you I can with a... The downside of cutting the hose is you got to buy a new hose, but it's just fuel line. You don't need to get the high pressure line. There is no high pressure going in through here. So just regular, ordinary carburetor type fuel line would be fine, and 5/16 fits. You can try poking screwdrivers in there, whatever you need to get it apart. Just because it's convenient, this is one of my wife's gardening tools. Don't tell her. Flat blade screwdrivers can work. There's fancy kind of hook things you can try to get in there, but this was more stuck than they should really be stuck. I was surprised at how much I had to argue with this. Generally speaking, though, this Hyundai is kind of fun to work on. It's easy to work on, which is
more than I can say for other cars I've owned. There it is.
So the new one comes with this much hose, but really I need a whole bunch more hose to make that work. So I checked my stash of hoses and I got a piece of 5/16 fuel injection hose. It doesn't have to be fuel injection, but it is the length that I need it to be, and hopefully it'll bend enough to get there. So I'm going to use the hose clamps, probably these. So I'm going to steal those. And I mean, I could reuse this. I could have reused this had I not cut it, but I couldn't get it off. And even then, if you look at this, and I'll zoom into that, you can see this. This is significantly weather cracked and not happy. So that's kind of X hose right there. So new hose is always a good idea.
When you're looking at drivability problems, one of the things I always tell my students is to make sure everything you have is good, and that includes hoses. So an older car, 10, 15 years old, I start looking at all the rubber hoses and replace anything that's showing some weather cracking and sources for leak. Putting it back together is relatively straightforward. You stuff the hose on the bung, put the hose clamp back on it, plug the valve in, don't forget to connect it, and put the whole everything back together. Of course, we're going to need to try this and see if that makes a difference. Don't forget to put everything back together that you took off.
So in theory, this should only be open when the engine's running, but there's air. Air can pass through this, so it's not actually sealing, it's not staying closed, which means as you fuel up the car, the fumes are going to be pushed into the engine and flood the engine. So this thing is stuck open, which is probably better than stuck closed. Nevertheless, we have a new one, so hooray!
Oop, that's probably enough. Fired right up.
So we replaced the evap purge solenoid. Relatively easy replacement, especially if you got small hands. Just got to get in there. I ended up cutting up the existing hose because I couldn't get it off easily, but 5/16 fuel line is dandy for that. Put it all back together, starts up just fine, no more need to flood clear or nothing, and a relatively easy fix. So there you go. Thanks for watching. As always, take care, and we'll see you again.